Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. Just a quick pledge allegiance to the flag. We'll get moving. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you all for coming. Mac and Steve have got more or less a final draft here, so in a second, I'm going to turn it right over to them. I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of February 26, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All's in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Mac, Steve?
Just thought we'd mention, as you know, we've had 3 weeks in between these last two meetings, and usually 4. Right after last meeting, that this group made several changes that you see highlighted in yellow in this version. We sent that to Chris Lynch. A week later, she got back to us with some suggestions. We made a few other little fixes, sent it back to her, and we got something back from her Friday after we'd already sent out these documents. So we ended up with a conference call with her this morning and worked on a couple of other things. So you'll see that Steve is going to take us through this. We've left out this section on leases and the section on withdrawal, that we have 2 separate documents that we'd like to go over with you in a little bit. They look a little different than what is in the main document. So let's first go through, and we just want to make sure that you've seen that we made the changes that this group highlighted last month. I mean, even though Michelle actually did them on the spot, there might have been a couple little rewording something, but so we'll go through that, and then we'll go back to the other 2 sections. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to highlight the about 10 changes that we've made. 4 of them are the same, actually. We'll start on page 5 on the amended version, section 4B. Top of page 5. In yellow, you'll see the annual budget as adopted by a 2/3 vote of the committee must be approved by a simple majority vote at both town meetings.
And the issue there is you wanted to make sure it was clear there was a simple majority at the town meetings, and which is the law, so that clarifies it.
Also on page 5, section 2, section 5B1, under operating costs. The operating costs shall include all costs except capital, debt, and transportation costs as defined in section 5C, D, and E, which shall include interest on temporary notes issued by the district in anticipation of revenue.
The issue there is, in several cases, as you know, we originally thought that transportation would be part of the operating budget, and we agreed last time in meeting with Christine and Ruth that that would not be included in operating costs, which is the case in most school districts, and it's as far as the year-end reports and everything, it's a little cleaner to keep that separate. So in several places we've deleted. We've said that transportation is now not part of operating costs. No, Ruth, I mean, Christine, you want to, anything?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
On all transportation or just non-mandated transportation?
All transportation.
All transportation?
So what will happen is, whatever the cost of the transportation is, minus whatever Chapter 71 reimbursement we get, then that'll be assessed to the town. Separate outside of it's still, the actual expenditure is part of the operating costs, but I'm just going to break out that as another assessment.
It's not going to be a separate line item? Not like, it'll be, the school assessment will include mandated busing, even part that the state doesn't pay for. The only thing that's broken out separately is non-mandated busing.
And also the regular. So, in other words, the expenditure for the non-mandated and the mandated busing will all be part of the expenditure and the operating cost. But then when I send the town's assessments, it'll be separated from the operating costs. It's gonna be exactly the way I do it now, except it will literally show you transportation minus the chapter 71. And that'll give a figure, and then it'll be split 60-40 between the two towns. It's just another invoice.
No,
That's all.
I'm just talking to my finance
Okay.
committee chairman here, make
thanks.
sure we're comfortable with it.
Page 6, section 5B2. This formula is illustrated below. Operating budget, which excludes capital, debt, and transportation, is the change.
It's all the same.
Yeah.
We don't have to, hopefully keep.
Also on page 6, section, just below, the paragraph below that, including out-of-district pupils, we just cleaned up some of that language on four instances, so you'll see it there. In the next paragraph, also, we'll use the term including out-of-district pupils for the second time. And if you turn over on page 7, both under section 6.2, once again, the resident pupil enrollment in all member towns in the district, including out-of-district pupils, is restated in that one as well.
So we just changed the order of the sentence, we thought it was a little more succinct. So it's the same concept, to include the out-of-district pupils.
And twice more at the bottom of page 7, under debt, section 2, resident pupil enrollment, including out-of-district pupils in all member towns in the district on October 1st, is stated twice in that section as well. Page 8, under 9E, transportation. The amount of Chapter 71 transportation reimbursement will be subtracted from the cost of pupil transportation, and this amount will be assessed to the towns based on pupil enrollment in all member towns in the district on October 1 of the preceding fiscal year for which the apportionment will be assessed.
We worked with Christine on this language, and this is what you're doing here now, what Christine is doing, so we just wanted to make it clear.
And those are the updates from,
There is one other update. Section F, when it says, section 2,
yes,
the installments no later than the first day of August, November, February, and that used to be April,
Yes.
but I had a request from Whitman to move it to May, because that's when their taxes are due, and I believe that's the same with Hanson, so
right.
it's fine with the treasurer, so.
That's reflected in the new document, so thank you.
Just makes it easier, because they end up paying it 10 or 12 days late, so this way they'll get it to us right on time.
This is me.
So
Okay.
before we go into those other two sections, any issues that we need to talk about? The rest of the agreement? Okay, so you take out the one at the top, it says lease language, Whitman-Hanson Regional Agreement, lease language. So Chris Lynch, both last week and today, expressed the notion that what you have in your agreement is not illegal, but she feels that it is very confining. And that is, it basically said that if the town is going to have a capital improvement in one of your elementary schools or middle schools, it has to be considered a debt. And as Christine said to me today, there are certainly occasions if, say, you needed $8,000 to renovate a couple of bathrooms, the town might say we have that in free cash or in their budget someplace. So your current language basically says it has to be considered a debt and it would have to go to a town meeting for a vote. So that still can happen. This doesn't prevent you from the selectmen for saying we're going to take the $8,000 or $100,000, whatever it is, to the town for a vote. But it does not require that to happen, if it's, especially if it's a small amount. I think, Christine, you gave me an example today of sometimes when that happens at the town.
Yeah, sometimes there's emergency situations, and we reach out to the selectmen, either town, if it needs to be done prior to town meeting, and they agree to it, because they already have a funding source. So then, at the town meeting, it would be a reimbursement for a project that was already done that needed to be done, say, in December, and we know we're not gonna have another meeting until May. That's what we've done in the past, which has worked fine, so.
Yeah, we've had a few, I think roof situations where I think we needed like 16,000 or something like
Right.
that. And on my board, we agreed to it, that we would put it in the special town meeting before our town meeting and reimburse the schools for it. We just took it out of our
Yeah, the
stabilization.
rooftop units at Whitman Middle.
Rooftop units, yeah. I mean, it needed to get done prior to school
Right.
year, so
So-
those things have to be done.
Technically, Chris Lynch was saying that you couldn't do that according to your current wording. So
Oh.
we tried to make it a little more general so that that can happen like that.
So we can continue to do it that way in emergencies. Good.
Yes, especially if you approve this language in here, then you definitely can. So we'll just talk about the few little changes in here. They're not highlighted in yellow, but in the third paragraph that starts, "The leases shall contain provisions," you'll see there are two words that were added here. So authorizing the district to make minor repairs and minor improvements or alterations to the buildings or any part thereof. The district shall pay all ordinary expenses of maintaining and operating the buildings. And the issue there was what if the towns are authorizing the school district to do general maintenance, could it be construed that general maintenance would be a $150,000 roof, that's maintaining the building? Well, I don't think anybody thinks that would be maintaining the building, but we were encouraged to put those words in to make it more clear that it's the general day-to-day maintenance of the building and not major maintenance of the building.
I thought once an issue becomes more than a certain amount, it's considered a major project, you know what I mean? Wasn't it 5,000, was it 5,000 or something like that?
That was the definition of a capital repair, was
Right, capital
an
repair.
amount $5,000 or greater in the original agreement.
Yeah,
Still there in the next section, right?
so basically it stays the same.
So again, and you see in blue there that we have stricken the words that say that it has to go to the town for a vote, because that'll be up to the selectmen. And Chris Lynch said the regional agreement should not be telling the selectmen how they handle a request for a capital
Wow,
project. So
thank you.
that
Some of them don't like this.
the district would say, this is
Not all of us.
this is what we need or want, and the selectmen will handle it. And if they want to handle it out of free cash or whatever, that's one thing. If they want it to go to a town meeting, then they can.
That's
Yes.
a good question. That does not take the district's right away from placing an article
No.
at town meeting.
No, no. So, again, the school committee would send an article to the selectmen, and the selectmen could say, oh, yeah, we can handle that because it's $8,000, $10,000, or no, it's $150, it's going to have to go through the debt process and maybe a debt exclusion even.
Gives you flexibility, it lends to the
Right.
flexibility of the agreement.
Right, that's exactly what it does. On the second page, you'll see at the end, it's the same thing. We've stricken, it says approval of the voters will be required in order for the work to proceed. And again, about your elementary schools and middle schools, it's just leaving it up to the selectmen of how they want to handle it. So those are basically the issues that she has.
Can I just ask a question? We talk about minor repairs, minor improvements, and ordinary expenses in section B, but then section 3, section 5C3, we specifically set the limit for capital costs.
5,000.
Do we need to bring that language together, right? Because could someone say, Yeah, it's $7,000, but that's a minor repair, that's not capital costs.
We've always used the 5,000 as a threshold.
Right, but the way this is written, right, you've got one paragraph that basically says the schools have to do minor repairs and minor improvements. You've got another paragraph that says capital costs over $5,000. There's nothing that says anything over five
So I
is
see-
considered a capital
So
cost,
if
right?
we
It's just
define-
the language isn't consistent.
Oh, I see.
and I
We
think
could,
there's
we
room
could
there.
define a minor repair, or improvement as, any
Less than
repair or
5,000.
improvement that does not exceed $5,000.
Is that-
That takes it from the selectmen, though.
What do you think, Christine?
I'm just worried it's not consistent.
It does refer to section 3B, that
The only thing, I understand where you're coming from, Chris, but I think with this, we want to be able to go to the selectmen if it is over 5,000. That's what this whole paragraph is about, right, Mac? Mm-hmm. So,
I think it's just.
So if you added that language and the repair was 7,000, you would lose this opportunity to have that.
I think that's how I read it. Am I right?
Well, in other words, we're just to define what is a capital repair and what is a minor, what's considered to be a minor, maintenance. Because theoretically, you could say, well, you spend more than 5,000 a year on fertilizing, the fields.
I mean, because, to be honest, I'd argue, right here, it says or alterations to the building. I'd argue, I don't care if you're changing a window, that technically is a capital improvement, right? So,
But if it's under 5,000, it would be borne by the district.
Right.
And that's.
Which is why I think if you just put a definition in there of less than 5,000 or something that brings it together.
Well, you could add it in and say the lease should contain provisions authorizing the district to make minor repairs and minor improvements or alterations to the building that do not exceed $5,000.
Right, that's what I,
Yeah.
exactly the way I said it.
See that, Michelle?
But then if it's 8,000.
Well, either that or you gotta make sure the 5,000's in your leases, right? Because it does say the leases shall contain provisions, so there's two ways to,
Right, it's either in the lease or.
it's either in the lease or it's in the agreement.
If it costs 7,000?
What if the district, what if something was 6,000 or 5,500 and
That's
the
what I
district
said.
wanted to take care of it? Would that
Right,
prevent
which
them?
sometimes we do.
But that language would prohibit that.
Well, but
prohibit
wait,
that.
are we talking about the actual actually doing the repair or the reimbursement thereof or both? Because, right, the lease says to make minor repairs, we're talking about making the minor improvements,
Right,
not reimbursement.
right.
Right.
Now what we're saying is,
Well-
if we limit that, the district cannot
We
make
need to define then minor repairs or improvements, or define what a $5,000 capital item is.
Because right now, the way this reads,
Yeah, no, I
only
agree with you.
capital
Either or.
expenditures are gonna be reimbursed, regardless of amount.
Like, how much did we spend on paint last year? In painting hallways and classrooms, we probably spent more than $5,000.
Right.
Wouldn't
the
that be
district paid for
maintenance?
that.
That's me.
Right, that's maintenance. But the way,
And it's not an individual item, right? So it's maintenance.
You're talking about windows. I could see like, if you turn around and say, okay, we need windows on one side of the building because either they're worn more because of the weathering system. So we need, for the high school, we need
Well, forget the high school, 'cause that's shared.
$35,000 to repair one side of all these certain floor windows. That's a capital repair.
Yep.
But if somebody throws a ball through the windowsill and breaks a couple of window panes, that's a maintenance repair. I look at it. Oh, insurance would cover it, but I mean, or something like that, or wearing of the window for some particular
it's
reason.
worked for us that we've defined a capital repair as a singular item that exceeds $5,000. Why don't we just stick that definition somewhere, make sure we have it, and that'd be borne by the member town in which the building presides, or split, between the two. If we just define it a little bit more readily, then we know it's not
I mean,
considered.
let me ask a question, right? And it's legit, because this just happened to a building that a buddy of mine manages, but we have a 70-mile-per-hour wind gust that blows in the front door of Conley Elementary, and
Okay.
that expense is $6,500. Is that maintenance that the school district is now responsible for, or is that a capital expenditure to replace that
That's an
door?
Well, it's an insurance claim.
It's an insurance claim.
Put that aside for a second, though, all right? But I mean,
Yeah.
what is it? Is
That's
it
not- that's not
maintenance or
general-
is it a capital expenditure?
That would be a capital, well, take a a water heater. Water heater goes at Conley. All right, it's a R.A.A.C water heater that's, don't ask me.
25 grand.
$24,000.
That's a capital,
Okay, that's a capital item.
Part goes in the part $6,000. Is that maintenance or is that a capital item?
what is?
I said a part goes in the part 6,000.
Oh, I
You don't have
see.
to replace is that maintenance or is that a?
That's a capital item.
It's a capital item because
Because it
we
exceeds
always
$5,000.
classify things over $5,000 as a
Correct.
capital item. I'm just concerned you've introduced language that says minor repairs and minor maintenance with no definition of where that stops.
I think it's ambiguous on purpose, to be perfectly honest with you.
That's not necessarily a good thing, though.
Well, this
10
is
years from now.
well, we're talking about an emergency repair. We're not talking about a capital project. We're talking about an expenditure that was unforeseen. A capital project is something you're planning for, hopefully.
Right.
And you're putting in a plan, and you're gonna put aside that amount of money to do that project
We don't-
later.
we don't-
This paragraph deals with emergency repairs, like you say, a boiler goes, you didn't know it was gonna happen, you need to fix it right away. Selectmen are notified, and they say, pay for the expense, we'll reimburse at the next town meeting, right? So that's a totally different issue than a planned capital expense in my eye. But I think if you add that 5,000 in that paragraph, you're limiting,
We're gonna be restricted as well.
you're gonna be restricted.
You can do.
I think you're restricting, emergency.
So do we go back to the other paragraph and just clarify that says a capital repair can relate to any expense, including minor repairs in excess of $5,000?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's one way to do it, right? You take the
Yeah.
same language that's here and you add it to the paragraph C. I'm just trying to make the language consistent. I think if you don't make the language consistent.
No, it's a good point.
It
Someone could
always
argue
brings
it.
in opportunity for someone,
Right.
what did they mean? What was the spirit of it? We all know what the spirit is because right now, today's practice is anything over $5,000, we go back to the towns and we expend.
Yeah, but it, actually,
Is that
it
because
sort
you're
of
using
says it,
common
though.
sense, Chris? And we can't count on the people that look at this 10 or 15 years down the road to use common sense.
Not based on what I've seen on Facebook in the last
Well,
2
then-
days.
Yeah,
Right?
well, then there you go, it's
Well,
gotta be fixed.
Yeah, but wait a
way
second,
or
wait a
the
second.
other.
Each member town shall be responsible for paying the capital costs as detailed in section 3B above. So that goes back to that other paragraph,
Well, there's no capital costs in 3B, though.
okay?
That's my point,
No,
right?
no.
We're going back to language that's not
detailed.
there.
But section through,
Okay, for its respective elementary and middle schools, as relates to the elementary and middle school in each town, capital costs shall include but not be limited to such expenses above as exceeding $5,000.
But not limited to is the key word.
Right.
But if we want to clarify, can't we just say add another sentence that says, this will also include minor repairs, minor improvements, or ordinary expenses in excess of $5,000? Is that what you're after, Chris? I mean, it's anything above $5,000.
It's really
Yeah, but it says such expenses
two different
described
subjects.
above.
it's two different
two different
things.
sections.
Totally two different subjects.
Because there is gonna be times that the district picks up the cost of
Yeah,
something that's more than $5,000. It happens,
Picks up the cost and doesn't get reimbursed?
that's correct. Yep,
Like what? What?
just like we just said, painting, other,
You know, if you have a paint project, there was a gray area, I know, what was it? So I know I brought it up to you and Ernie. We had one bill was $4,700 to fix something, and then there was a subsequent bill for another $300 or $400 or something like that. I want to say it was on a chairlift.
you're
if I
probably
remember
right. Yep.
correctly. And it was a different circumstance, even though it was within a time period that was close. And I'm like, well, why aren't we charging, it happened to be the town of Hanson, because it was in the Hanson School, the lift. You know, why aren't we charging them you know, as a capital item, and it didn't exceed it because it was two separate repairs, not one, so.
You know, and again, I don't,
This has worked for 50 years.
I mean, I don't know that it has to be here, but it's not spelled out in the leases, or it's not spelled out somewhere.
Either that or just add, you know, I mean, it says as described above and it references 3B above. So it does reference the, and maybe it's something for the lawyer to draw up to reference it properly, but I think it does go back to referencing it. where
Yeah,
it
I just
says
don't, I don't
3B.
love the fact that we don't use the term capital expenditures anywhere in one paragraph, and that's what we're saying they are in the next paragraph.
Would it clarify it enough just to take out what's in parentheses? That was in your, that is in your current, just a different reference, it's referencing 4B, but, because they are two separate things. This is, the first page, the B is about minor repairs, and section 3 is about capital costs.
It's two different
So
things.
they are two different things, yes.
So if they're two different things, and the school system's still entitled to reimbursement for those items over $5,000 that aren't capital costs, then I think we need to specifically spell those out.
Oh.
Right, because where's the agreement that says, if you do a maintenance, an emergency maintenance item that's over $5,000, we're gonna reimburse you.
Well,
Not
here's,
necessarily. Maintenance capital, I know it's a fine line there.
But if we had rules in place that had said it was a single item or any two items within a 1-year time frame, maybe we would have been going back and billing
hang on.
the town of Hanson, right, if we had the right definition. We just don't have a definition.
Third paragraph in the middle, under section 3B. The committee shall also be authorized to make major improvements, alterations, additions, or capital expenditures to town-owned schools, but only after the notification of the appropriate members, town's selectmen. So what do you do when you have a water heater that's $24,000, it's leaking? You fire off a letter to the town, but do you let it keep leaking, or do you get it fixed the
We
next
fix
day?
it.
or
Fix it.
You
We
repair it
fix
the
it,
next
same
day?
as we do right now.
Right. But this says that you can only do that after notification, is that letter?
You just call up Mike
notification.
McHugh, you call up Frank Lynham and say,
Okay.
that's
It's
it,
broke.
it's broke, we gotta fix it. That's what we currently do right now, because they might not get the letter for 2 days, so we
Right.
make a phone call.
Okay.
Pay me now, pay me later.
Well, I think we, I see
I see
Chris's
it's fine
point.
the way it is.
I think it's fine the way it is.
I was just going to make a quick observation. And I think it might be okay the way it is.
Yeah.
When I look at it, Bob, the problem that I see is we're looking at section 3. We turn the piece of paper over, and now we're looking at section 5. And they're so close. Where's section 4? Chris looked it up. Section 4 is all about the budget. So section 3 and section 5 aren't close to one another. And I can see what Chris is saying, but the common sense would tell you that it's
Two different issues.
two different things. And, you know, there's a possibility of maybe taking out, or getting the wording right, but, I mean, you put section 4 in there and you're gonna read through this whole thing, you have a big thing on the budget in section 4. So, you've just read section 3, now you go to the budget in section 4, now you've come into a totally separate thing on section 5. which explains how much, you know, it would be up to the $5,000. So I would think it wouldn't be that confusing if anyone read it.
Common sense obviously should prevail, but as was said earlier, that's not the case usually.
Well, why don't we just define an ordinary expense of maintaining and operating the buildings shall be, you know, the day-to-day cleaning, or whatever we're gonna,
We don't want to restrict ourselves that much, I don't think.
or then you just define a repair, you know, a minor alteration and minor repair shall be a repair that does not exceed $5,000. Boom. Just do it that way.
Now, if you put a number on minor repairs, you could have a, you know, like you said, paint could cost $10,000. If you're painting a whole, you know,
But that's not a repair, that's maintenance.
that's maintenance. All right, repair.
In other words, we're talking
I
just to
think we're
go
talking
toward,
repairs.
right, so you're defining a repair as a capital item, you know, if it's in excess of $5,000 or $4,999.
If the chairlift was so bad that it needed a new one, it would be over the $5,000, there you
Yeah.
go. But if it's
So in 3B, you
if
would
it's
just
a
say,
minor repair for 300, then it's not.
Well, it was major repair, but, well, or considered in this case, minor repair is 4,700.
And it would still be under the 5.
It was under the 5.
Yeah.
Right, wherever you get to, if you're under 5, you're under 5. It doesn't matter if it's 4,900, you're under 5, that's the number.
so in 3B, if you just said capital cost, minor repairs, or capital cost shall include but not be limited to expenses. See, we're kind of, I don't know, we're defining capital costs here, right, as anything over $5,000.
Right, but all you need to say here is, where is it? Where it says minor improvements or alterations to the building shall be defined as any, or repair, minor repairs, improvements or alterations, and in parentheses even, you know, any expense less than $5,000, any singular expense.
Yeah, but I agree to the point earlier, that paragraph is intended to allow you to actually go do the work.
Yes.
Right.
I think, to me, the place for that definition is in 3B, when you talk about reimbursement.
That's
Section 5,
section 5.
right?
Because 3B is
Right.
repair.
3B is authorizing you to go ahead and do the work.
And wouldn't that mean that the school system would never do anything over $5,000? If you said that.
Right, but sometimes we do.
Yeah, right, so I think that
I wanna
would
be able to-
prevent that.
The other part of it is that the sentence in the large paragraph, it says, approved projects will not be a part of the regional school
Right.
district budget. So projects that aren't approved would. You know, so I think that really covers it. I mean, if it goes to the selectmen, they decide yay or nay, are we gonna reimburse, yes or no? And if it's no,
Well, I want to be careful there. If the Whitman, or if the Hanson Board, as a Whitman taxpayer, the Hanson Board of Selectmen says, I'm not paying for that.
Yeah, but
I don't wanna pay
this doesn't say that they have to say that they'll pay for it, it just says that they have to be notified.
Hopefully they'll pay for it.
In other words, the way it reads is that only after notification, not them giving approval, just that they're notified.
Right, if you got a boiler that's gone, you have to fix it, whether we say we're gonna pay for it or not.
So here's the point,
we
Rick,
just
you
create an
asked
article
this
to town
last
meeting.
week, right?
right?
You said, why isn't it $10,000? So Hanson has a change in their Board of Selectmen, they say, you know what, we think this should be 10 grand, and I'm using Hanson because I'm from Whitman, no, could be Whitman Selectmen, right? Hey, I think this should be 10 grand, and you know what, I don't care what the agreement says, I'm not authorizing reimbursement for any minor repair unless it's more than 10 grand. Board of Selectmen doesn't reimburse it, how do we deal with that?
The Board of Selectmen doesn't have any choice. They have a signed agreement by previous Boards of Selectmen that's binding. It's not really their discussion.
No, they don't, because it doesn't spell out that minor repairs over $5,000
Then
will
you
be
put an article
reimbursed.
on the
Only
annual
giving you
town
two.
meeting
That's why
and
you
you
give
argue the point.
Cutting it in two. No, I'm not.
I'm just saying, it's not clear, and I don't love it.
Again, I'll throw out, and I won't say it again, but if we took away that parentheses in 3 and 5C3, so that there's no reference back to that, would that take away some of the confusion? And so it's considered a separate issue?
It really does spell it out.
It says, as relates to elementary and middle schools in each town, capital costs shall include, but not be limited to, such expenses described above as
Well,
exceed
you have to get rid of above
$5,000.
because there's a section in between, right? So that has to go anyway.
Oh, yeah, never thought about that.
We have to change the wording anyway because that doesn't make sense.
What? Say that again?
You have to get rid of
The word
such expenses
above?
described above because there's a section 4
Right.
in between the two
Right,
sections.
just
that
needs to
you're-
say
Get rid
3B,
of above.
Yeah, you gotta get rid of above. It
Unless
would
you
actually have to-
stipulate
described in
3B.
section
Yeah.
3B.
Yeah.
3 is still above 5. It is this.
But someone would think.
Chronologically.
Right.
Very good.
But in contract jargon, it means what's right above it.
All right, so we got to ditch above.
Yep.
I would just replace it with as described. in
I
section
think
3B.
if you actually put, I think if you actually put, to such expenses described in section 3B, and maybe you want to put excluding minor or maintenance or whatever, right? Because we don't want to get into the paintage or whatever it was.
No, but this spells it out, such expenses described above as exceeding, that probably should be as exceeding, $5,000. It spells it out. If you want to tie it a little bit better than above, I
Put
think
the
it ties
section.
it right into it.
Put the section, would it, instead of saying above, put in section so-and-so,
Yeah.
described in section so-and-so.
Yeah, for its respective elementary and middle schools, as it relates to elementary and middle schools in each town, capital costs shall include, but not be limited to, such expenses described in section 3B
Except,
as exceeding $5,000.
you told me you wanted to exclude maintenance from that, right? You wanted to exclude things like paint.
I don't think maintenance are emergency repair, right? That's what section 3 is. And painting and maintenance aren't capital costs either.
Yeah, and I
So
think.
that doesn't apply
right,
to
because
section.
it has that but not limited to, I think that's the wiggle room.
Yeah.
Right, because the school's gonna come back and say, well, it says not limited to, it's $10,000 for the replacement part on the R.A.A.C reimburse. And the towns might say no, and we're gonna say, school department say, right here, it says but not limited to, so you have to. Still not
I
perfect.
mean, painting, is something that we do. It's part of the operating budget, it's part of the, well, the wax is different, but part of, the carpet cleaning, we contract out for a carpet cleaner. I think that costs more than $5,000 a year, and they clean the carpets over the summer.
I don't love the language, but I think anything we change is gonna make something else worse. I can't come up with anything that makes sense to change here.
Well, this happened, and I know we're trying to straighten out what has happened in the previous years, but I mean, 99.9%, when you go to the Board of Selectmen, or you go to a town meeting and you get up and you read it out, we put in a R.A.A.C water heater, $24,000, all those in favor, they pay it.
Right.
Never
You know,
had
I
a
mean,
problem.
it's all the same pockets, guys.
Since I've been here, we've never had an issue calling either Board of Selectmen if there's been an emergency, if a water heater died, or,
It is what it is.
whether it was a $12,000 issue or a $90,000 issue.
We have to fix it.
I mean, we had an issue at Hanson Middle School a few years ago that the insurance only covered a certain amount, and we, went to the selectmen and told them we needed an additional $90,000, and they agreed to do it, and then at the next town meeting, we did the reimbursement on the town meeting floor. And I've been here 6 years, and I've never had a problem. They've never said no.
So we say,
On an emergency repair.
leave it the way it is, written?
I think you have to get rid of above,
Get rid of
Get rid of
above
above
and
and tie
add
it to
exceeding.
3B.
Yeah.
tie it to 3B.
Everybody okay with that?
I think that's safe.
You hearing it, Joe?
It's green and crossed out.
Yep,
That's all you need me to do, right?
yep. Actually, can you make it blue?
No, down in the red.
That'll be.
Yeah, get rid of that, and then down in the red where it says described
Right
above,
there.
it should be described as in,
As exceeding.
Such expenses described in 3B as
3B.
exceed.
Section 3B, yeah. Same as above there, or same as it's noted there. And then,
Do the same thing there. Cross that out.
Yeah, right, so it says, describing
yeah,
Just take out the
section
two above.
3B.
Yes.
above.
Yeah.
such
And then
expenses described as.
exceeding at ing.
Well, if you add ing, you're gonna have to take out the as.
yeah.
It's grammatically correct the way it is, but we can make it exceeding, but you have to take out the as, I would say. Whichever you
English
want.
teacher here.
Do you
Take
see
out
that?
the word as. It's not right there.
Well, yeah, it's either or, right? You can either leave it.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Yep, that's fine.
We're leaving the as.
Yeah, nothing's gonna change in
We're not-
section 3.
We're not taking out the as, or we need to take out the as? Add exceeding?
As it's coming out, it's struck through.
And added exceeding?
Everybody okay with that? Okay,
Yep.
This stuff, just ask, tell them what's.
okay, so does that finish that, this section?
Okay,
What's next?
all right, we have one other section which I think will be simpler, about the withdrawal language.
We'll see about that.
Is that a challenge?
No, no, not for me.
Or maybe you took mine as a challenge. So your withdrawal language talks about if one member town withdraws from the region. And as Chris Lynch pointed out very clearly, if one town withdraws, you have no more region anymore, right? So this whole section, the region is totally gone.
Well,
You can't have a region with one town.
what happens if a town wants to withdraw, but still keep the high school regionalized?
Like we used to.
You took out the language last time of taking out K to 8.
Okay.
So,
So who owns the high school then?
okay, well, this talks about that. So, this has been rewritten to, and you'll see the first thing in yellow on the first line, it says, "The withdrawal of a member town from the district will result in the dissolution of the district." So that's, she wanted us to make that clear. So, then, we can do as much with this as you want, but let's go down to the red words under procedure, because in terms of Section A, we didn't change anything that's in your current agreement other than what's in yellow.
Want to read this?
Sure.
The selectmen of the non-withdrawing member town shall include in the warrant for the next annual or special town meeting, call for the purpose of an article, the terms of withdrawal. Such amendment shall become effective on a July 1st, no less than 1 full year after the approval of the non-withdrawing member town. After the acceptance by each town to be a majority vote at a town meeting as aforesaid, and after approval of the commissioner, no later than the preceding December 31st.
I think I remember saying at the beginning, if you're changing a regional agreement without adding or deleting any member towns, that could be done anytime. You could theoretically approve this at your next month's town meeting or May's town meeting, and it can start on July 1st. But if you're adding or deleting a member town, it has to be done with all the approvals by a December 31st for it to happen the next July 1st. So that's why that language is there.
Obligations of member towns. In addition to other terms and requirements which the committee shall include in the amendment, the member towns, if the district is dissolved, will be responsible for the following. 1, payment of all operating costs for each year town is liable as a member of the district. 2, payments beyond the time of dissolution for each member town share of the indebtedness of the district which is outstanding at the time of such dissolution, and for interest thereon to the same extent and in the same manner as though each town had not withdrawn from the district. 3, other liabilities incurred during all times that each town was a member of the district. Example, OPEB, other post-employment benefits. And 4, for the costs, including legal fees, that accrue to the district as a result of the process created by the withdrawing member town. All expenses related to the dissolution of the district will be borne by the member town which initiates the dissolution of the district. Approval of withdrawal.
Oh, let's stop there. So these 4 things are things that DESE has encouraged us to include in all regional agreements going forward. I think I mentioned that out at the Gateway Regional School District, they didn't specifically say anything about OPEB responsibilities, and Worthington was allowed to leave the district. And there's been a court case that's gone to 3 levels, gone to the Supreme Court of Massachusetts, and the Supreme Court said, well, it wasn't in their regional agreement, so Worthington is not going to have to pay the OPEB responsibilities of all those teachers who were part of the region when they were part of the region. They've just been absolved from that. So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen here or any other place. So it's trying to spell out all the possibilities of liabilities that would happen if your region were to be dissolved.
Approval of withdrawal. A request to withdraw shall become effective only if the amendment to the agreement is approved by a majority vote of the committee, is approved by a majority vote at an annual or special town meeting in the member towns, is approved by the commissioner, and the dissolution of the district can only become effective on a July 1st, no less than 1 full year after the completion of these requirements.
When you dissolve that, it doesn't have to go to a town meeting vote? Not just not a town meeting, excuse me, town-wide vote?
No, each town would vote on it.
Not town meeting, I'm talking about a town ballot vote.
No.
No? It'll be a town meeting?
Town meeting could vote to dissolve.
Plus the OPEB liability is
withdraw.
over 50 million, so
Yeah.
probably, yeah.
That's huge.
Those first 4 requirements, it should not be easy to dissolve.
No, I agree with you.
And those first 4, as I look at, would probably stop any of these 2 towns from ever doing it. Just the OPEB liability, if you broke, I don't know how you'd break it up.
I don't know either, I guess we'd have to,
You have to be on a payment plan, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be financial problems for the town, either town, to try and head on its own
The
and
town-
build buildings and do things, and then incur that OPEB liability.
For OPEB, I think the town would be responsible for all the elementary and middle school teachers that work in their town.
right.
Right. that's-
Plus,
And then the high school would be
plus their share of
high school.
60-40 split of the high school teachers forever, for as long as you've been in the, so it'd be a big number.
There's more teachers in Whitman.
Huh? Yeah.
Whitman Middle School has more teachers than Hanson Middle School, so.
Well, the whole thing would be, you'd break that out by town, and
Right.
then you'd take the high school and divide it
Right.
60-40
Right.
probably.
Right.
But I mean, I don't see any of that happening.
E, upon the effective date of dissolution of the district, the terms of office of all members serving on the committee shall terminate. F, money incumbent from the member towns for payment of obligations, as outlined in section 9C above, shall be used only for such purpose, and until so used, shall be deposited in a trust, which is established at the time of dissolution.
Most regional agreements would say if there are more than 2 towns in it, that it would be put in a trust held by the district, but there's no more district if one town pulls out. So that state, Christine and her colleague said that we would have to set up a trust to help to hold the money. And so, and the other obstacle is technically, if the town pulled out, they would be responsible for putting all of the OPEB responsibilities in a trust immediately. So your towns would have to borrow all that money to put in a trust to pay that. That's another huge obstacle.
Division of assets. Both towns will be entitled to any assets that need to be divided between the towns, to be negotiated between the member towns' public school committees and selectmen.
So that's kind of new language that we've worked on, and this is something for you to discuss. Our assumption is that the negotiations would be between now, if the region is dissolved, there would be a public school committee for each town. There will be a Hanson Public School Committee and a Whitman Public School Committee, and we assume that those school committees and the selectmen from each of the towns would negotiate how to divide up the assets. And most places don't want to make that too specific now, because who knows 20 years from now what circumstances there may be, and leave it up to those people who were in power at the time. That's up to you all.
That's it.
Okay. We have to take a vote on the amendments to the regional agreement. Is there any, I guess
I'm sorry.
you looking for,
I'm sorry. I hesitate to bring this up about the lease, the terms of lease. We have the lease agreement. In the document as it's written right now, it says leases shall be for 20 years. And we know that you had special legislation. And when we talked with the state, they made an interesting distinction. They said, is it permissible, does the law say it's permissible to have more than 20 years, or does it say you have to have more than 20 years? And the way we read it, it's permissible. It says, notwithstanding the provisions of Section 14C of Chapter 71 of the general laws or any other general or special law in the country, the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District is hereby authorized to lease property for a term in excess of 20 years. So it doesn't say it has to be, it just says you can do it. So I hesitate to bring this up, but it says right now what we have written in there is 20 years. So the question is, do you want to change that in any way?
Shouldn't we have a match?
Pardon me?
Shouldn't we have a match? What do you mean? When you say it's, where are you pointing? Where's the 20 years specified? What are you looking at?
Actually, it's on that paragraph about the leases.
Section 3.
3B.
So rather than say each lease shall be for a term of 20 years, wouldn't we just simply be able to say at least a term of 20 years?
You could, that's why I'm asking you.
And then we're covered, right?
Yeah, you could do whatever you want there. The question is, someone was asking, what are the, I think Fred was saying, what are the pros and cons of that? The only pro that I can think of to limit it at 20 is it forces people to talk about it every 20 years to see if there are any others. Maybe you don't want to talk about it.
20 versus 50.
Yeah,
That's still a long
stupid
time.
question.
It won't be me.
Where are we at right now with our current leases? How much time is remaining? How long do they run? Anybody have a copy of them?
Yes, I do.
I have it with me, so.
You don't have all those dates right now.
Not yet.
It says the term of this lease commences on July 1st, 1992.
Yeah. And it was
yeah,
what,
that's
50
when the
years?
re-regionalized.
No, this is for,
Which building?
it says for 20 years in here, so in 2012, it ran out.
Okay, so we're tenants at will right now?
Get out of my building.
I think it's 22.
Well, by adopting this regional agreement,
102, 112.
Right.
yeah,
20 years, so.
32?
So, I just, again, I didn't want to have you think afterwards that we didn't raise that because you have.
Well, there
this
is pros and cons. I mean, if you leave the 20-year lease in there, we have to discuss it in 20 years, which probably I don't think many of us will be here in 20 years to discuss it. Or if you say at least 20 years, then they don't even, that's saying that they don't have to look at it, whoever's sitting here. Is that right?
Yeah, at least 20 years is a minimal amount being at least.
Right,
And then it doesn't specify
Right.
a
right,
termination point.
right.
It says at least.
I mean, we're gonna,
Wait, we
I
have to
would
change
think, be
that.
sending this all to our attorney anyways.
Yes.
Should we
Each lease
maybe
shall, so
just ask his opinion?
at least,
But I think it's partly what you want.
says
Do you,
each lease shall be.
you want to have
for
a
term of
limitation
20
or
years.
not?
Say that is what you want, I'm sure that's.
I think
Looks
we
like
want the
we-
flexibility, you want the flexibility, because
always
then on
want
any given
flexibility.
lease, I mean, if we're blowing through 20 years just like that.
Right.
We also know that we can return a building to a town with, well, what notice was it, 6
Oh,
months?
yeah, 180, yeah.
180 days notice, I mean. we
Yeah,
can
so
give them
it's-
a bond, so.
Yeah, it's not a real big problem.
Could you have it read from the date of the most recent regional agreement, 20 years from that date?
Well, when we vote this agreement, I would say that it starts the new lease period.
Right.
You should sign.
When
it
this
at least.
agreement is voted and finally approved, you're on a brand-new agreement with a brand-new lease.
But do you still want to add at least 20 years in that, instead of each lease shall be for a term of 20 years? Or do you want to put each lease shall be for a term for at least 20 years?
I would think at least.
It
but-
can't hurt you,
You put at least-
because if you want either way, at least leaves it open-ended.
Right.
You can close it at any time you want, like Fred just said, we just,
Well, we won't have to worry about it.
Under B,
What does the lease do for us, other than allow us to
Just-
probably take out insurance and things like that, right?
That's
I mean,
about
that's
it.
really all it does, right?
Yeah.
Because we can return a building in 6 months, and
We can return the building
And
is
if a-
owned by
and
the
if a town withdraws, the
I
lease
think
is
it may
broken
flip
anyway,
some
right?
liability
So-
to us instead of the town as well.
it's just
a lease usually covers the tenant more than it does the owner.
right.
I mean, leases originally were made, Chris, as I
But we're not
understand it,
paying
50
rent
years
or,
ago,
I
so
mean,
you
we're-
could borrow
it's really
again.
Right,
just-
we pay nothing.
It's really just
You know?
so that we have legal entitlement to
Yeah,
maintain the building and get
Exactly.
insurance.
It's
And
I think it's the mechanism for the utilization,
right.
If we need to borrow
which is
money,
why not just go.
So,
out
so then,
30, 40.
then I think it becomes a legal question, right? So, do we just make it so it's open-ended, and now we're covered forever, and we
You can
never have to
close it
renew
anytime
them?
you want.
Right.
to the best
or-
of my knowledge, we're the only district that has that ability.
Legal,
yeah,
may do
Might as well use it.
Might as well keep it, right? So then we don't have to deal
not
with
give it up.
signing 6 leases or whatever it is every.
Well, yeah, and who's gonna mark their calendar for
Right.
20 years from now? Who,
Chris,
one of us is
Chris,
gonna come back?
this agreement was 92 and it's supposed to be reviewed so many years and nobody's touched it until we looked at it one day and said, this needs to be cleaned up.
Mr. Mincello,
But it
Mr.
does
Finley,
give
and
you-
myself did have a review committee.
I mean, I think as long as the lawyer's fine with an
I was
open-ended,
on
you know,
that too.
in excess of
I was
20
on that
years,
too.
Yeah,
Were you?
just go for it.
Yeah.
We met over here? I don't remember you being there.
each of your leases are 11 pages long, which is probably the longest in the whole state.
Yeah,
Which is why we don't want to have to look at them. It's even more of a reason.
At least for at least 20 years.
okay.
Okay, we
So
got
are we
that.
ready to look at the amendments and take a vote on them? I basically should have had a motion and a second before we get into all this discussion.
Make a motion to approve the amendments as presented.
Thank you. Second, somebody?
Second.
Sorry.
Any further discussion? Michelle has something to say.
Hold on, he's got my notes.
They were very well done.
Okay, what's the motion? Who made the motion, please?
I did.
Excuse me, Fred and Chris.
Seconded.
Chris,
Howard.
right?
Howard?
Yes.
And what's the motion?
To go home.
To approve the amendments as stated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Now's the time. Michelle's pointing. Now's the time. Fred?
One bit of discussion. And this is obviously subject to approval by our attorneys, the town's attorneys,
And the state's attorney.
state's attorneys. And then, of course, town meeting and all that.
Right.
Any further discussion?
Did you write all that down?
Yeah, district, town, and state. Subject to the approval of legal counsel.
You got all that, Joe?
You underestimate her.
Okay, is there any further discussion before we move to the vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you.
Great.
Is there anybody in the public sector that would like to speak?
They're all clamoring for it.
Seeing none? We really don't need a future meeting date, do we?
Unless any of these lawyers come back with something significant, I would say.
If we have an attorney situation that they don't like some of the language, if the committee will so afford me the opportunity to set up another meeting to work out any of the kinks that may have to be changed, we will do so and notify you.
We have one in April scheduled, by the way.
Yeah, but that's gonna be too late for town meeting because
Right, so that's
town meeting's
canceled.
only a week later.
That's
Christina's wondering about the 9th, isn't that what you?
Yeah, the 9th.
April 9th? As a
Only-
fallback?
Yeah, as a fallback if we need it.
I'll
Because
be
the second
on
we can't
vacation.
and the 9th,
What, in April?
yeah. If needed.
Okay,
Okay?
if needed. I mean, I'll have to come back.
You'll have to come back from vacation.
I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
All those in favor?
aye, we're done.
Thank you, everyone, for all of the work on this.
This group has been very
We got
efficient.
through it.
We've
As
appreciated
long as we
working
don't
with
get
you.
a issue with